Welcome to EVTN News, where we identify as the number one news network on the internet. And Vigano is the topic of today's first news item. Brother Martin of the Oblates of St. Augustine questioned Vigano's effectiveness in the trad world by posting a tweet. He said, Vigano is not interested in ordaining for you any more traditional priests. Go get yourselves in trouble. I'll just hide here. So, what do you guys think about that? For me, I go back and forth on Archbishop Vigano. After 2018, whenever he released information that the McCarrican network was alive and well in the United States, um, he's basically been reading LifeSite News, and I think he's more or less using a lot of their talking points from LifeSite News, and I've gone back and forth on this. On one hand, I wish Vigano would actually do something rather than just write letters. On the other hand, he's 80 years old, and then on one hand, um, I don't know. He's definitely well off. He's a multimillionaire, and so he's pretty set for life. And on the other hand, he's the only archbishop that's actually talking about this stuff and speaking the way he does. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments of the video what your thoughts are on Vigano and his effectiveness in the trad world. But it's certainly obviously Brother Martin is very frustrated that no bishops are standing up for traditional seminarians, and with the possibility that the FSSP and the Institute will be shut down from new seminarians, from taking in new seminarians, and maybe even ordaining the current ones. That's a real problem here. I just heard that the FSSP seminary is an apostolic investigation. Apostolic inquisition. What visitation? I think is the word. Is the actual word. So the FSSP seminary in Nebraska. We'll see what comes of that. I don't think it will be anything good, but we'll see. And I guess based on that in the Inquisitions, did you watch the LifeSite News video with Father Maximilian from the Carmelites of Fairfield? Apparently, one of their sisters is professing solemn vows, or probably has already done it by now. And Bishop Schneider was going to be there, but this interview aired, I think it was last week when they released it. And one thing I forgot to mention on some of my videos was that Father Maximilian, he said that Archbishop Perez of Philadelphia said that the traditional Carmelite nuns were a cult. And I think that kind of indicates what Archbishop Perez thinks of the Latin Mass and traditional practices. So there's that. And getting to traditionalism, SSPX reacted to the news that there may be women in seminaries, and like there may be women going through seminary formations, and they said that this is Archbishop Listecki who had this report, who said that we found that there were women in some seminaries who pretended to be men, and they were kicked out whenever they were discovered. He says, contrary to what Archbishop Listecki fears, ordaining such an individual will not make him, or rather her, a priest. Now, this is from the SSPX. They said, according to divine law, the priesthood can be conferred only to human individuals of the male sex. Change of identity card or outward appearance cannot do anything about it. On the other hand, from a psychological and media point of view, it would certainly be a pitiful and boring business. It is also to be feared that in the United States or elsewhere, one or the other bishop will attempt to ordain a woman who pretends to be a man, as there have already been attempts to ordain women. So I don't know. That's just their take on it. I think it's fine. Good. It's good to have people that are clarifying everything. Cardinal Turkson says Biden should not be denied communion. That's a big statement. And Cardinal Turkson, he is one of the popular candidates for Pope. And so, keep his name in. And I've been talking about him a lot. And pay attention to what he says. He's got a high position in the Vatican. He's an African cardinal. And people say, we need an African. Well, here's Cardinal Turkson. Um, he heads the Vatican's dicastery for promoting integral human development. And he said the Eucharist should not in any way become a weapon. If you say somebody cannot receive communion, you are basically doing a judgment that you are in a state of sin. Okay. And then when asked directly by journalist Mike Allen if that applied to Biden, Turkson replied no. In discussing the extreme cases, Turkson offered an example of a priest denying communion to a known murderer, which he implied would be a legitimate grounds for denying it. Well, if that's the case, why wouldn't you deny it to pro-abortion politicians? Because they're pretty much, they pretty much have the ability to directly um, cancel or directly end abortion in the United States effectively. Turkson later posted a tweet October 5th. He said, concerning the ongoing debate about abortion and worthiness to receive communion, my response is that of Jesus. Let any of you that is without sin be the first to throw a stone. Ours is not to declare public sinners. Ours is to pray for conversion of sinners. But why don't you call out the sin? Um, this has really been part of the Catholic faith up until the last 50 years. So, all right, a Cuban priest speaks out against his country's political system. Father Alberto Reyes Pias, a priest of the Archdiocese of Camagüey in Cuba, he said the Cuban model has been a failure, and I humbly want to ask the left to finish accepting it because while you refuse to accept it and boast of continuing to say to a dead person, come on, you can, my people suffer. Please stop mocking my people. Stop mechanically defending a wonderful reality that does not exist. Respect yourselves and assume that Cuba is not what you would have wanted it to be, and that 62 years is more than enough time to show that it never will be. Do not applaud the failure of socialism in my land with speeches of feigned pride, and if you do not want to say by how clear we have failed, at least remain silent and learn to be silent, which can also be a worthy opinion. So he's basically saying, let's be honest or don't say anything, which is pretty good. He's calling out the socialists, which pretty much encompasses everyone who considers themselves any remotely leftist. They're all socialists, and so yeah, I agree. Good for this priest speaking out against communism. Bishop Strickland calls out Vatican Institute. So Bishop Strickland reiterated to Terry Barber of Virgin Most Powerful Radio that marriage and family are the building blocks that God has given us. The vast majority of the issues that we see in society today is because of the erosion of the family and the lack of understanding of what marriage is, and to abandon that is really just more destructive to human society. Compassion does not mean trying to redefine what a family is. So thank you, Bishop Strickland. I think a lot of, especially conservatives, they say, "Oh well, I'm not against LMNOP. I support it. It's legal." And um, yeah, I think we need to speak out against it. And Bishop Strickland is so good on him. I think especially a lot of the bishops, like Cardinal Nighty Night Tobin says the Pride Masses, and Stowe, he promotes that kind of lifestyle. And I think we really need to speak out against it, but we also need to call out the people that are distorting the Catholic faith in this regard, in regards to marriage. Uh, Vancouver Archdiocese will suspend unjabbed deacons. Monsignor Gregory Smith, the director of the Archdiocesan Deacons, confirmed last Monday the authenticity of a letter obtained by LifeSite News. It says, as you know, diaconal ministry is a ministry of service not only to God but to the people of God. Therefore, for the protection of the faithful and our priests, the Archbishop has directed that any deacon not fully jabbed may not exercise any diaconal ministry until receiving 2 doses of an approved jab by Health Canada. The Archbishop is Archbishop J. Michael Miller, and there's only one deacon in process to be ordained to the priesthood. And so I think a lot of these are just like married deacons who are just the permanent deacons in the Novus Ordo. And I don't know. I mean, I, I don't know. Is it that much of a problem that they're not standing on the altar or like reading the gospel? I mean, that's a priest's job anyway. And does this just apply to deacons? So I don't know. Obviously, I'm not a fan of Jab Crow, but I'm also not a fan of married deacons. I mean, no offense, because there are some good ones, but by and large, it's like a lot of them are, what would you say, social justice warriors, and we don't need any of that in our church. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Jab Crow's never good. But that's the same thing as saying I'm banning Eucharistic ministers. That's good. It may not be for the right reasons, but you know. Anyway, there's massive numbers in the French abuse report. The French report found that over a 70-year period from 1950 to 2020, approximately 3,000 molesters allegedly abused an estimated 216,000 minors. And so I posted a reaction from the Catholic League, and it says, contrary to some news stories, not all were priests. 1/3 of the offenses were committed by those who worked in Catholic schools, youth programs, and other agencies. And I just did some quick math. This equates to an average of 72 victims per offender. Does that really seem likely? I don't think so. I think this is grossly overinflated, if you ask me. Without knowing anything in detail here, that seems like 216,000 seems like way too high, and I'm not going to blame anyone here, but it certainly seems like some of those numbers may be reported by people who just are looking for money. That's my thoughts. Not to dismiss any credibility to people that make any of these claims, but that number doesn't seem right. It seems completely off. Um, Moving on to the USCCB, they will continue the discussion about the Eucharist despite the efforts of Supich and Francis. And so when they meet in November, they will revisit the discussion they began in mid-June about the Eucharist and be presented with a drafted document on the meaning of the Eucharist and the life of the Church. And so I guess the media narrative was about denying communion to Joe Biden. And Pope Francis is trying to really undermine that. And a lot of the bishops are saying, "Oh, this isn't political. This isn't political," and it's not. You just deny. You just should deny communion to the people that support abortion, and regardless of political party. So if there were to be a Republican that supported pro-abortion, that supported abortion, deny them communion. But there's not. They're only Democrats, and so the bad bishops like McElroy sees it as a partisan issue. Well, it's only partisan because the biggest abortion supporters, the only abortion supporters, are Democrats at this point. If like I said, if they did cross party lines, then deny the other party communion as well for that. But let's not pretend like this isn't, an issue that we need to talk about, and that people should be denied communion because they directly, like I said before, they directly impact. These politicians have the opportunity to directly impact legalization or the prohibition of abortion. So watch for that, and we'll see if any bishops bring up that topic of denying communion to people who are in direct contradiction of the Catholic faith. But meaning of the Eucharist and the life of the Church, a lot of the bishops said a lot of nothing, and I watched like how many hours was it? 4 hours of discussions. They had extended discussions because a lot of bishops wanted to weigh in on the topic. A lot of bishops wanted to shut it down. Well, not a lot, but there were a decent number of bishops that wanted to shut it down. It was about 25% voted against even talking about the Eucharist. And then Supich had that letter before the USCCB meeting saying that he wanted to not even discuss it at all, not have a discussion on the discussion about the Eucharist. So um, that's going to be interesting. And speaking of the USCCB meeting, there's committee chairs up for grabs. I don't really pay a lot of attention to these, but you might be interested in some of the names and the impacts they could have on, uh, the USCCB if they were to be elected. So Bishop James Checo Chechio of Metuchen and Archbishop Paul Etienne of Seattle will be they gave me the two hardest names. Anyway, they'll be considered for the position of USCCB Treasurer-elect, leading the conference's Budget and Finance Committee. A significant portion of their revenue comes from immigration funding through the U.S. government, and so that's that has a potential. And I know Archbishop Etienne of Seattle is very bad. He doesn't stand for the Catholic faith. I don't know about the Bishop of Metuchen, but that's one of McCarrick's former dioceses. So the position of the Migration Committee will be considered between Bishop Seitz of El Paso and Archbishop Wensky of Miami. Now, Seitz is all out Francis Church. Archbishop Wensky, he's a biker bishop. He rides a motorcycle, and he was on, I think it was the Catholic Legal Immigration Network's board of directors, where they received Soros funding. So that's yeah, but Wensky would probably be a better, he'd probably be better in this situation. We'll see what happens. Bishop Stephen Lopes of the Ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter and Archbishop Mitchell Rosansky of St. Louis are the candidates for the chairman-elect of the Committee on Divine Worship. This committee has responsibility for all matters relating to the liturgy. In March 2020, amid the virus, Rosansky was the Bishop of Springfield, Massachusetts, and he attempted to authorize a change to norms for anointing of the sick, permitting a nurse rather than a priest to conduct the physical anointing. So you definitely don't want him. Only a priest can validly administer the sacrament. Yeah, like we all thought. All right, so Bishop Lopes is of the Ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter. Now this is, I want to reiterate here, this is for all matters relating to the liturgy. And the Ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter is otherwise known as the Anglican Ordinariate. They have Mass in English, but it's a different structure than the Novus Ordo, and it's much more reverent. Ad Orientem is required, and so it would be interesting to have him elected to this chair. Unfortunately, I don't expect that to happen, but we'll see. We'll see if the bishops. We'll see how many of them are. We'll see how many of them vote whatever way they decide. And for the USCCB's Committee on Laity, Marriage, Family Life, and Youth, the bishops will choose between Bishop Robert Barron and Bishop Edward Burns of Dallas. I think Barron's probably going to win hands down. I don't even think it'll be close. This is the Committee on Laity, Marriage, Family Life, and Youth. And so Bishop Barron's going to be in charge of the youth programs for the next 3 years of the USCCB. Guarantee. All right, I'm not going to guarantee it, but in terms of predictions, this one's a pretty safe prediction. He was already doing a lot of this research anyway and presenting this information, and so he's going to be in charge of that. But he's also going to be in charge of marriage and family life. There's a reasonable hope that, anyway. Last one is Archbishop Samuel Acula of Denver and Bishop Earl Boyer of Lansing are candidates for chairman-elect for the Committee on Clergy, Consecrated Life, and Vocations. And so Archbishop Acula is probably going to get it. He's not horrible, although one of the commenters on this channel, Adrian, I believe, said that Archbishop Acula shut down an Ad Orientem Novus Ordo Mass. Told a priest he couldn't say Ad Orientem Mass anymore, so I don't know about that. That's really not going to inspire vocations. Bishop Boyer is, I think he's one of the he's one of the good bishops, I think, based on the comments that I've seen from him. And I think he's actually very under the radar, but I think he's very friendly towards the Latin Mass. And I don't know, he's just a name to keep on the radar. I think an archbishop will get elected over a bishop to this committee. So I expect Aquila to be on this committee, and he's not. I don't think he's hostile towards the Latin Mass. So hopefully we'll see what happens there. Neither I don't think Aquila's horrible. I don't know. All right, moving on. Nancy Pelosi met with Pope Francis at the Vatican on October 9th. Pelosi was in Rome to speak at a meeting of legislators from around the world, preparation for the UN Climate Summit. And Pelosi, who claims to be Catholic, said in a statement, "It's a spiritual, personal, and official honor to have an audience with the Pope. She said, His Holiness's leadership is a source of joy and hope for Catholics and all people, challenging each of us to be good stewards of God's creation, to act on climate, to embrace the refugee, the immigrant, and the poor, and to recognize the dignity and divinity in everyone." Notice she didn't say about respecting life, because obviously she doesn't. And Pope Francis, he will meet with a lot of people. He has met with President Trump, he met with President Obama, and he met with Cardinal Zen and Cardinal Bert. No, he didn't. He didn't meet with Catholic cardinals, but he'll meet with all these politicians. That's all right. No, it's not. Eco-theological message presented by Pope Francis. This is great. Pope Francis received participants of the two-day pre-COP26 parliamentary meeting. The meeting's aim was to set the floor for the 26th UN Climate Change Conference hosted by Italy and the UK and scheduled to run in Glasgow from November 1st to 12th. He said, "We are facing a significant educational challenge since all change requires an educational process aimed at developing a new universal solidarity and a more welcoming society. The challenge is to promote an education for an integral ecology is one to which we, the representatives of the religions, are firmly committed." And so he's committed to this universality. He says that we need to increase our propaganda amongst in our educational systems. That's basically what I'm getting from this. We need to increase our basically eco-theology. And thank you, Trendy Web. That's actually my next topic, is that Pope Francis backed out of the climate summit. So he will not be going to the Glasgow Climate Conference. The Vatican released a statement October 8th saying the Holy See delegation for the summit would be led by Cardinal Parolin, Vatican Secretary of State. And you know Pope Francis is really into this stuff. Like, the climate dominates what he talks about. And so based on this information that he's not going, for him to not go, there must be some serious health concerns. That's all I have to say on that. Australian bishops prevent priests from issuing an antivirus letter. You probably heard about this by now. The Catholic priests of Australia intended to release a statement on September 22nd in response to certain aspects of the virus crisis. The initiative had gained 75 signatures by the time it was due to be first published, and the website was set to go live at midday September 22nd. So in the letter, it was going, like, I guess the letter would have said, because LifeSite News obtained a copy, it said, "In any crisis, a legitimate and proportionate response cannot be at the cost of human rights, which are not conferred by the state, but rather bestowed by the Creator, and therefore constitute the inalienable foundation of human dignity." And these priests presented 11 key points seeking to address the spiritual emergency of the virus era and argued against jab passports, mandatory jabs, and restriction on the church's public worship. So LifeSite News had obtained a copy and was due to report on it as it was released, but at the last moment was told by one of the priests to hold off from doing so. due to pressure from the bishops in Australia who had told the priests organizing the statement not to release it. What's the point? Why not just say go ahead with it? What's going to happen? There's 75 priests. Are they all going to be fired? What are the bishops going to do? Are they going to say, all right, well, we're just going to leave these churches vacant then? Or is there even public mass in Australia? Because I know they're very virus crazy. They're living in lockdown utopia. So these priests, this is kind of like what happened with Cardinal Sarah backing out of one of Vigano's letters. It's just, come on, step up. Speaking of Australia, there was a pagan ritual that took place at an Australian conference. I think they do this like annually, these pagan rituals at their Catholic events. The popular Welcome to the Country ritual began outside the cathedral as an indigenous elder, unnamed in the official program, explained the purpose of the ceremony was to cleanse the bad spirits away from the area. On this plenary council day, we're going to try and drive the bad spirits away, he said. The elder then cut pieces of eucalyptus branches and leaves into a bonfire, sending large plumes of gray smoke across the sacred space. As this elder continued to stoke the fire, his female counterpart, also unnamed in the program, stepped to the microphone and explained, as part of the smoking ceremony, we invite you all to come and walk through the smoke, wash yourself with the smoke. Come, good spirits, and be with us today, she added. So, I think at the Australian Youth Day conference, or Australian Youth Conference from a few years ago, there was some pagan stuff that took place. Like the altar was basically a stage, and then they had obviously their guitar masses and everything, but there was a fire, like a campfire thing on the stage, and whoever was doing a reading, I don't know if it was a deacon, kind of like waved the Bible through the smoke like this, and then they had like some pagan ritual before offertory, and it was very crazy, really weird. Now we're moving on to ugly art. There is an Elemento Pieta at Santa Maria de Montesano in Rome. If you really want to see it, you can look on Twitter. And there's a dirt altar at a Novus Ordo church in Germany. They have the dirt altar to symbolize some kind of like earth worship stuff. So yeah, of course, Germany. And we'll move on to the Vatican. Bishop Heung-sik of South Korea is the prefect for the Congregation of the Clergy, and I'm expecting him to be named a cardinal at some point, just because that's a department that's pretty significant in the Vatican. So I'm going to read you a quote here. He said, "During my 41 years as a priest and then as a bishop, the example of Jesus always challenged me in the washing of the feet, and even more his offering on the cross. It was above all there that he was a priest. This made me understand that living the priesthood in fullness means giving one's life for others, putting oneself at the service, being a man of dialogue and communion. So for me, being a priest and a bishop means walking together with others, loving them in a particular way, listening to people well. In this way, the priest is a father of the community, a man alongside his brothers and sisters who are walking towards the kingdom of God, a companion who becomes one with people in difficulty." And so this, after I read this last quote, you'll see why I think he's going to be named a cardinal. He said, "I expect from the synodal way that we learn more and more to live as brothers and sisters, listening to each other and listening to the Spirit, knowing how to grasp and make grow all the good that is found in humanity. Living as a synodal church will not be an effortless journey, but it means opening the doors to the Spirit for a new Pentecost." So we're going to have a new Pentecost. We already had the new Pentecost 50 years ago, and now we're going to have another new Pentecost with this synod. And this bishop from South Korea, he's looking to become a cardinal. There we go. The Denver Cathedral was vandalized. This was the Cathedral Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in Denver, Colorado. On Sunday, it had satanic messages shortly before the morning mass. So there you go. Another one here in the United States. And finally, Cardinal Gretsch. Um, I like to post a little bit of the information from these cardinals so you get kind of a picture. You start to name names of who may become the next pope. This guy, I don't know. He'd be Francis. He'd be Francis II. Uh, he Cardinal Mario Gretsch is the Secretary General of the Synod of Bishops. He said, "It is a grace today, a grace that today Christendom is no more, because we felt we had arrived the Church as a perfect society. And whoever is perfect doesn't feel the need to seek to improve, to convert, to set out on the path, listening to the Spirit, whereas this is the gospel." So we have just I talked about a few cardinals and then a few people who are one person who wants to be a cardinal today, and it's just so demoralizing because um, you can see that these these people in the Vatican just have no interest in the Catholic faith. They like a lot of the UN, the United Nations initiatives. They're not interested in Catholic initiatives, and this is what we're facing. This is quite sad. It does make me very disappointed. One wonders. Okay, so I'm getting into the comments. One wonders whether any bishops are really women. Um, okay, and third Pentecost in a row. So we're going for the third Pentecost. Yeah, maybe third time's a charm. I mean, I guess the first one wasn't good enough, although it certainly seemed like it. If you read the Book of Acts, it, it certainly seems like the first Pentecost was enough to inspire, um, well, the apostles, and then they inspired an entire church. So I retch when I hear Gretsch. Maybe the Synod will evolve us to get rid of the hierarchy. Well, Pope Francis is rethinking the priesthood, so that's certainly a possibility. That's evolution, isn't it? Yeah, science. Follow the science. All right, hey, this has been EVTN News. I'd really try to keep these short and try to summarize the news stories that I think are important. I mean, this is really all my opinion. That's really what it is. But then you can read for yourself in the comments or in the description. I post all my references in the description. So this has been EVTN News. Thank you so much for watching. We are the laity, and we will not be silent.